Hello and welcome to the program. Our today's topic is Secondary Education, Aims and Objectives of General Education. The objectives set for the program are to get acquainted with the history and evolution of secondary education, to become familiar with the concept of secondary education, to get an insight into the aims and objectives of secondary education, as put forward by various commissions appointed from time to time, and to know about the general aims and objectives as prescribed for the development of higher education. Before we start, let's have an introduction. Society is considered as a system of individuals, groups, and institutions interacting between and among themselves in order to realize certain definite and common accepted goals of national life. Has several subsystems within it, which in turn have to function in a vigorous, coordinated, and integrated way towards the set goals. Education is one of these subsystems. It has a variety of functions to perform through its various organs. Secondary education is one of the components of this subsystem called education. Secondary education exposes students to the contribution of science, humanities, and social science in the development of a nation. This is also a stage where children are provided with a sense of history and national perspective and given opportunities to understand their constitutional duties and rights as citizens. Secondary education facilitates occupational and social mobility, and it is the stage of education which is being considered as a minimum level of attainment of people to move up in a modern technological world. Now, let us discuss history and evolution of secondary education. The roots of the system of education which is prevalent today can be traced to the early period of 19th century, when the government of the day has sponsored surveys of the prevalent system of education with a view to organizing education to suit the needs of the times. In India, secondary education grew up in isolation from the system of elementary education. So, necessity arose for the establishment of secondary schools. Moreover, education imparted in these institutions became a passport for entrance into government services. Primarily, it was meant for the upper class and was really a preparation for college. In 1837, English was made the court language. Lord Hardinge passed a resolution according to which English-knowing Indians were offered high posts. As a result of this, Western education, in preference to traditional learning, gathered momentum in the country, and educational discrimination occurred in the minds of the Indians. However, by 1852, there were only 52 secondary schools throughout the country. Since secondary education was specifically and exclusively meant to be college preparatory, it was exclusively academic and bookish, out of touch with life. The growth of secondary education in India shows unique trends. During the period starting from 1850 to 1919, when the colonial government completely transferred the education authority to elected Indian ministers at the provincial level. There was an undue emphasis on the expansion of secondary schools and colleges. Indian social structures and local factors played a vital role in the provincing of both primary and secondary schooling during this period. It is argued that the number of public primary schools was lower in districts with higher level of caste and religion diversity. In such districts, traditional elites preferred to develop secondary schools. After 1919, policies of provincial governments largely influenced the pattern of growth of secondary schooling provisions. In fact, in 1948, India had around 12,500 secondary schools of all grades in its major states and enrolled in them a little less than 3 million children. However, even after favorable expansion policies of the colonial government, the number of high and higher secondary schools in India was around 4,000 in 1948 with an enrollment of about 1.8 million. Now let's have a look over the concept of secondary education. Formal education is typically divided into a number of educational stages, covering early childhood education, primary education, and tertiary or higher education. Secondary education normally takes place in secondary school, taking place after primary education and may be followed by higher education or vocational training. Secondary schools may be called high schools or academies. In India, high school is a grade of education from standards 8 to 10th. Standards 9th and 10th is also called secondary school. Usually, students from the age 14 to 17 study in this section. A school where there are standards 11 and 12 is called higher secondary school. At the secondary school level, there are two divisions, the junior and the senior. The junior stage of secondary schools is known in some cases as middle schools or lower secondary schools, and in some as the senior basic schools. It covers a period varying in different areas between 3 and 4 years. In the majority of states, the pattern is one of 3 years. High schools correspond to the senior school stage of secondary schools. In the large majority of cases, this stage extends over a period of 3 years. In a few states, the high school period is limited to 2 years, the middle school being of 4 years duration. Now, over the aims and objectives of secondary education. Compulsory secondary education aims are to convey students the essential elements of culture, especially in the human aspects, artistic, scientific and technological aspects. Strengthen them, working on the study habits that allow students to learn for themselves. Promote teamwork, train them so that they can assume their duties and exercise their rights as responsible citizens, and to prepare them with appropriate safeguards for further studies and for their incorporation in the labor market. Now, let's have a look over the aims and objectives of secondary education according to Secondary Education Commission 1952 to 53. The Mudaliar Commission or Secondary Education Commission made a general survey of the entire field of secondary education. It defined the growing needs of the newborn nation. It realized the importance of secondary education, and according to this commission, the aims of secondary education should be as under. First, development of democratic citizenship. Education should aim at the development of capacity of clear thinking and receptivity to new ideas. It must also develop a scientific attitude of mind to enable the individual to think objectively and have its conclusions based on facts and tested data. Successful living in democracy is based not on the force but on free discussions, persuasions, and amicable exchange of ideas. So, it is essential that education must develop the quality of clear free expression. Second, improvement of vocational efficiency. Secondary education must concentrate on increasing the productive or vocational efficiency of the young students. This means creating new attitude to the work which implies on the appreciation of the dignity of all work, high or low, realization of the fact that the national prosperity is possible only through works in which everyone must participate. The Commission suggested academic work on the part of the practical work. Diversification of courses should be introduced at the secondary stage so that a large number of students may take up agricultural, technical, commercial and other practical courses which will train them varied aptitude and enable them to take up vocational pursuits at the end of the secondary school course. Third, development of personality. Education at secondary stage should release the force of creative energy in the student so that they are able to appreciate their cultural heritage, to cultivate rich interest which they can pursue in their leisure, and to contribute to the development of their heritage. For the purpose, a prominent place should be given to the subject like art, craft, music, and development of similar hobbies in the secondary school curriculum. Fourth, education for leadership. The role of education in providing us with the proper leadership cannot be underestimated. The secondary stage of education is of vital importance in this regard. The secondary education should train the persons to assume the responsibility of leadership in social, political, industrial, and cultural life of their country or community. The term leadership, which is to be understood in the wider sum and not synonymous with the political leadership, calls for social issues and greater technical efficiencies. Now, aims and objectives of secondary education as laid down by Indian Education Commission 1964 to 66. Kothari Commission has observed that the existing system of education is unrelated to life and there is wide gap between it and national development. The Commission recommended that education must be related to the life, need and aspirations of the people. The aims and objectives of secondary education according to the Commission should be as under. First, education and productivity. Education must be related to productivity to secure rapid economic development, so that an expression of education must lead to an increase in national income. For this purpose, the Commission recommended: first, science education should be made an integral part of school education because in a modern society, production is based on science. Knowledge of science is essential to promote understanding of basic principles, analytic skills, and the ability to apply the problems of material environment. Second, work experience introduced as an integral part of all education, general or vocational. It will facilitate the entry of youth into the world of work and employment, and it will enable them to contribute towards development of national productivity. Third, vocationalization of education should be brought into effect. The youth should be diverted to different walks of life by the introduction of practical subjects in the secondary school. Fourth, application of school should be utilized in the development of productivity. Every effort should be made to link application of science to productive process. Second, social and national integration. The Commission observed that in the socialistic pattern of society, which the nation desires to create selfish and narrow loyalties to the person and group interests must be given place to wider loyalties for national development. Education must aim at social and national integration to make India strong and united. To achieve this aim, the Commission has recommended the following programs. First, a common school system. Common schools should be set up in the country to bring different social classes together because these schools will be open to all children irrespective of caste, creed, community, religion, economy and social status. Second, social and national service. It should be made compulsory for all students and should be made an integral part of education at all stages of education. It will help in building character, improving discipline, inculcating faith in the dignity of manual labor, and development a sense of social responsibility. At secondary stage, social services should be for a total period of 30 days. Third, proper language policy. Formulation of proper language policy can also prove conducive to the national development of social and national integration. Modern Indian languages should be developed to bring the elite and the masses together. Regional languages should be made medium of instruction. Fourth, promoting national consciousness. promoting of national consciousness should be an important objective of education. On the one hand, the students should be able to understand and re-evaluate their cultural heritage, and on the other, they should have a strong faith in the future. It is desired that special emphasis should be laid on the development of values such as scientific temper of mind, tolerance, respect for the culture of other national groups, etc. Third, education of modernization. Due to progress in science and technology, India is on the road to modernization. Education should help in accelerating the process of modernization. So, in the educational reconstruction, the following points should be kept in mind. First, keeping pace with expanding knowledge. There is a great explosion of knowledge in the modern world, and it is essential that education should keep pace with it. Otherwise, India will be lagging behind in the process of modernization. Second, curiosity of change. Education should not only impart knowledge but also aim at awakening of curiosity towards significant social change. It should develop interests, attitudes, values, and capacity to think and judge for oneself. Third, creation of new social order. Process of modernization involves creation of new social order. Education must be oriented to meet the social, economic, cultural, and political problems of new social order. Fourth, social, moral, and spiritual value. Education must cultivate social, moral, and ethical values among students. For this purpose, like Commission has made the following recommendations. First, in all government and privately managed institutions, education in social, moral, and spiritual valued nature should be introduced. Second, education in social and spiritual values should be made an integral part of education. Some period should be set apart in the timetable for this purpose. Third, well chosen information about each of the major religions should be imparted to the students through well organized syllabi. Thus, syllabi should highlight the fundamental similarities in the great religions of the world. Fourth, it would be of great advantage to make a common course of this subject in all parts of the country, and common textbooks should be prepared at the national level. It is clear from the recommendations of the Commission that education should aim at development of democratic citizenship, development of vocational and productive efficiency, development of personality, development of leadership, development of process of modernization, and inculcation of social, moral, and spiritual values. But it should be always kept in mind that needs of society and nation are ever changing, and education should always be alert to keep pace with these changes. Now, students, let us conclude. It is time we organize and rising levels of democratic consciousness and social aspirations among the young people in the age group of 14 to 18 years. The conventional expectations from the secondary, senior secondary education lies in its role in creating the necessary base for generating technical person power, raising the potential of a society in contributing to the growth of the knowledge and skills, and thereby enhancing the nation's capacity to face the challenge of global competitiveness. The contemporary and additional expectations from secondary education is to build a democratic citizenship that is committed to the constitutional goal of enabling the country to move towards the egalitarian, secular, enlightened society. Dear students, hope you have understood well. Thank you.